TV, Facebook.
Carrie's already thinking about the after party.
So the audio has been modified a little bit, so now people in the audience should be able to hear easier. You know how before you talked to the microphone, you couldn't hear anything out there?
Good. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the North Branford Planning and Zoning regular meeting for Thursday, February 6th. In attendance are regular members Galdenzi and DeFrancesco and Dulac. First order of business, in the packet received, we have the minutes from January 16th. All three of us were there, so we can take action on that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, part 4, other business, item C, believe should be amended to include how we discussed, there's a bunch of, alternative parking options that we discussed, including, possibly the rear parking in the back there. So that way we remained on the same parcel, not dependent on other businesses and other parcels surrounding it.
Okay, so for the third to last sentence, she's just using the hardware store for the overflow parking, and then we can put after that, and consider, oh shoot, curious.
No.
Oh, no, right, okay. And consider alternative on-site parking. Would that work for y'all?
Yeah.
Okay. Right there, you want to do that?
That's fine, so,
You want to write
that
it
will
on
be
this?
included, no,
Oh, I gotcha.
we'll just capture it in these minutes.
Anything else? If not, make a motion to approve as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes on Thursday, January 16th, with the amended, minutes.
I second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes 3-0. Okay, so that's done. All right. So our next order of business is a public hearing, application 2019-18. If somebody would like to read the legal notice.
Sure, right, yeah. So this is the, okay, anyway, please insert the following legal ad in the Sound on Thursday, January 23rd, 2020, and Thursday, January 23rd, 2020. Legal notice, North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that the North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, February 6, 2020, at the North Branford Town Hall, 909 Foxton Road, North Branford, Connecticut, to consider the following. Application 2019-18. It's a re-subdivision application for splitting one lot into 2 lots at 104 White Hollow Road. Owner applicant Bernard Sermola. At this hearing, all interested persons may appear and be heard, and written communications will be received. Copies of proposals are on file for public inspection in the Town Hall Planning Department. Harry Dulac, Chairman.
Now joining us is regular members Mace, and also sitting for this public hearing, and including members Galdenzi, DeFrancesco, and Dulac. All right.
Okay, so, I'll just do a quick, overview, and then the applicant, Mr. Samola, is here, so he can explain the proposal as well. But this is an existing, lot at 104 White Hollow Road. And he's proposing to create 2 lots. I'll let him go through all of the details, but just from an administrative point of view, the town engineer has reviewed it, and all of his comments have been addressed. The Regional Water Authority had the following comments. They have reviewed the above referenced application. The property is within the Farm River Public Water Supply watershed. The applicant is proposing a subdivision to create an additional building lot for a single-family residence. Based on the information submitted, we have the following comments. 1, if the residence is to be heated with fuel oil, it should be stored above ground. Fuel storage tanks and associated Piping in the basement should be segregated from floor drains and sump pumps to prevent spills and leaks from discharging to the environment. 2, during construction, all fuel, oil, paint, or other hazardous materials should be stored in a secondary container and removed to a locked indoor area with an impervious floor during non-work hours. And 3, roof drainage should be directed to a landscaped area to allow for natural infiltration. Sincerely, Ron Walters. So that's the only feedback that I received. The other component that we can talk about, during the presentation is with all subdivisions, there's a requirement to create open space or provide a fee in lieu of open space. So we can just talk about what the applicant would like to do with that.
Yeah. Let's see if there's enough space, open space to make it worthwhile for the town.
Where is this?
Oh, you have, there's a,
There's the easel right there.
I know where White Hollow is, but like, how far up on White Hollow is this?
So,
I'm just trying to
see
get
on
my
the-
arms
Half
back.
mile off of 17.
So is it past the Lane's Pond, and it's past,
It's past Lane's Pond and Hummingbird.
it's kind of when you come up the straightaway, right?
Right.
It's off of that.
Right,
side.
where
Okay.
the curve is, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't show, it doesn't, oh, is that it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a location map in the corner.
Yeah. Let's see. That's the problem. Way back here. Oh, there it is. I see it.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Bertie Smola. I'm the property owner of 104 White Hollow Road. We are proposing to split the existing 4.5-acre lot into 2 pieces. First lot, the lot with the existing house, is 79,000 square feet. 40,000 is required. Second lot in the rear is 97,000 square feet, where 60,000 is required. Lot number 2 will have access from White Hollow Road with the easement over the existing driveway, which is here. And also, per zoning regs, will have a minimum 25-foot wide access strip to White Hollow Road over here. It meets all zoning requirements as far as setback, frontage, building square. The lot number 2 has been approved for well and septic by East Shore Health District.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that. So East Shore did provide a referral as well, approving it back in July, actually. And it just says provisional approval contingent on complying with all local and state regulations.
And all the proposed work will be outside of the 100-foot review area.
So you're extending the existing driveway? You have an existing.
There's a driveway that goes on, there's a barn there.
Oh, okay, so it goes from asphalt to gravel already?
Yes. Just past the existing houses, it turns to gravel.
Gravel.
drawing a blank, but what's the purpose of the minimum of the 25-foot access strip?
So that's in our regulations to provide for, easy access and ownership, continual ownership to the street line.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All the way
Yeah,
back.
I got you, yeah.
So, so even though they may not use it for actual access because
Right.
they're using the easement due to grades or proximity to wetlands, maybe in this case, that's just in our regulations
Right.
so that there's a secondary access possibly in case that easement ever were to go away.
Yep.
This other area on here, the color copies way better. That's the barn.
Yeah, that's the barn, it looks that way.
Oh, they're.
This is the barn here, this is your asphalt, then it turns into,
Correct.
and that's your
Yes,
barn, that's the barn, that's existing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a true picture.
Just out of curiosity and my own learning, how do you know where to draw the lot lines? Like the shape of the lot?
Well, so our zoning regulations require a 150-foot square
Mm-hmm.
be placed somewhere in the parcel.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be within the setbacks anywhere, so that determines the shape,
Oh, that's
ensuring
interesting.
that it's a square. But then, and then you need access to
Huh.
main road, and then that has to be at least 25 feet wide.
Yep, so you kind of
So,
work backwards.
it's all, and then in this situation, it's based also around, I would imagine, the existing house.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, that helps determine where to put the new lot.
And the septic control.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
where the placement of the lot.
Interesting.
10 feet off.
Right, and then the well has to be a certain distance from the septic and the house, so it's
Few things going on.
moving pieces, like
I
puzzle.
had some
Yeah.
help with, Mrs. Duquesne to get me through it.
Yeah, that sounds
Glorious. Carrie, are there any other comments from the heads or department heads, or
No,
is everything?
no,
Straightforward.
so the one kind of moving piece is the open space part.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really seem to make sense to have a dedicated area of open space because you're in a neighborhood and then who would manage and maintain it? So then we started looking at a fee in lieu of open space. But then, Mr. Smola explained that most likely this is going to go to his children. So there's an exemption clause in the regulation that if you transfer it to a relative, that you don't have to pay that. So now it's a matter of just working up that language that could be put on the final Mylar, and having the town attorney take a look at it, so that it would be spelled out, so that he would have options, and he's not just limited to doing one thing.
Well, the creation of the open space option, I mean, doesn't sound, in this area, doesn't look very
Beneficial.
valuable.
Right.
So, I
There's
mean,
no
I don't
way-
think, I mean, I don't know,
Opt out.
I don't think that should be an option. I'm
Mhm.
trying that, yeah.
Right. So,
And then the other part of it is, if a family member, if you do deed it to a family member, there's no cost and fee of lieu of open space. But what happens when that family member then sells that property? Does the fee carry through, or is it just on the original, let's call it the original
The
deed?
duration of that was my question.
Yeah.
so I asked the town attorney that, because, so this is what it says in the regulation, let's see. It says that it's temporary, I'll read it from the regulation. There's the ability for the Planning and Zoning Commission to actually revoke the approval of the subdivision if the commission feels that the property was transferred to a relative only to avoid having to pay the fee in lieu of open space. But it's unclear how long
10 years
of,
down the
like,
road.
right,
Right.
There's no other language that if it's not like fitting in the character or use of the area, we could opt out of the open space altogether? There's nothing else in there?
so it's
just the
either
family thing?
create the open space or pay a fee.
There's no other like language?
No.
It's only
Well,
those
there's
two.
only two real options you have.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was.
But so I'm just gonna read this, so exemptions from open space disposition requirements. The transfer of all land in a subdivision of less than 5 lots is to a parent, child, brother, sister, grandparent, grandchild, aunt, uncle, or first cousin of the property owner for no consideration. Such intended transfers shall be evidenced by covenants, restrictions, contracts, or other legally binding documents as the commission may approve, which documents shall be filed in the land records in accordance with the procedures and other requirements of section 604 of these regulations. If the commission determines, based on events subsequent to the approval of such subdivision, that such transfers were intended to be temporary, excuse me, and for the sole purpose of evading the requirements of section 314 of these regulations, the commission may, following a public hearing with notice by certified mail to the violator, void, in whole or in part, any such subdivision approval, and may cause notice thereof to be filed in the land North Branford land
All
record.
right, so that makes, I think what they're saying, so they're saying.
That doesn't apply to
Yeah,
this.
that's this.
That's
I would
not
think
a-
after
that's not a-
10 years or even
that's not a
5 years
concern
No,
or.
I
anymore.
think,
Our
I think
concern
if
is-
they're, I think if they're saying if you sell it to a family member and then that family member
Yes,
does
so
some kind
a
of.
month later.
Yes.
Develops it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Which that's not.
yeah, yeah.
Our
I mean,
So at the discretion of the
But,
commission.
but
Yeah.
it sounded, I don't know, it sounded like there may be some legal options, like a deed, putting it on a deed or something, right? That was
The
the
language?
first part of what you read, you said.
Right, so
there's
here's,
options of like.
so this
putting it-
is-
If
this-
we were concerned about that, I'm saying, it sounds
Right.
like we could do something like that.
so here's, language that I'm suggesting that was actually incorporated on Great Hill Road on that subdivision. I don't even know when this was. Probably back in 2006. So, it was actually something that Chairman Fawnin at the time had recommended. So I think this language applies. So I think that on the plan, it should say something like this. A covenant that is reviewed and approved by the town attorney shall be placed on the approved subdivision map, which requires a payment in lieu of open space to be paid to the town of North Branford at the time of sale of lots 1 and 2 at blank, whatever the amount is, for each lot, if any such lot is sold in contravention of the exemption authorized by the North Branford subdivision regulations, section 314K.
Perfect.
So if they sell it to
Yep.
anyone as opposed to just transferring it to a relative, then they would have to pay the fee. So it gives you the
Does that apply
option.
to both lots?
Would apply, right, actually just to the new lot.
Yeah, yep.
And that's, technically that language is forever or for a certain period of time?
It seems like just.
Well,
I think just that initial
Yeah.
sale,
'Cause once
just
you-
after
Okay.
it's created,
Yeah.
the first owner.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because, yeah, when they resell, we don't look for payment in lieu of. Yeah.
okay.
Right, yeah, I think we're good, so.
So you can send me that verbiage?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm just going to have the town attorney just confirm, and then I'll talk with you some more about what the actual fee in lieu of open space is.
Leave it to
And we can,
20,000 or-
well, we can talk with the assessor, yeah,
2006.
yeah.
So could we take any, we can't take any action?
No, I would
to go
just
through that.
continue just
All
until
right.
we have the language
Yep.
firmed up.
So somebody can, oh, is there anything else? I mean, I'm jumping the gun right here.
This is a public hearing.
Public, right.
Yeah, I'm jumping the gun.
Oh, sorry.
What- Anybody from the public like to speak on this application? Can you check in the hallway?
Thanks, yeah.
Anyone have thought
Thanks
that
for,
we could-
thanks for checking for us, though.
All right, could somebody make a motion to continue to the, February 20th meeting?
Move to continue
Okay.
the public hearing application 2019-18 to the February what?
20th.
February 20th meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you. We'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you. Well, actually, we're not even have to come.
Right.
All right. Moving along.
Okay.
She has to get the language.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Contravention. What was
Uh,
that
no.
word again?
Yeah, what was the word again? I gotta write it down.
Yes, I had
What's
to,
that?
actually.
Contravention?
Hold on, let me get it for you. It's a good one.
What did you
SAT
type? What is it in
What
shorthand?
what did I copy from the, where is it? Contravention.
Yeah, very clear.
All right.
Contravention.
We're on to other business, discussion regarding, wineries and breweries in relationship to pending state legislation.
So I'm going to pass this out, and then Alex, sorry to put you on the spot, but I may have you just kind of talk about it generally. Sorry, I know. These are,
Better
so,
free flow out of your mouth.
That's one set.
Yeah.
If you don't know, that's.
Kind of a-
No, that's one full set.
Oh.
Right?
yes.
There's another set. Okey-dokey, so if you-
So what you have in front of you is an email between myself and Representative Candelora. And this is a law which takes effect July 1st, and as you can read, allows for breweries and vineyards to apply for a cafe craft permit. So the permit will allow them to sell other breweries and farm winery products.
That's cool.
And they would not be able to sell a brand of a product that they produce, so Roses can't sell any other wine.
So if
But
you're a
they could
winery,
sell,
you
you could
could
sell
sell their
craft
brand
beer.
product.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. I thought that was already being done.
So, Carrie, the breweries and vineyards, if they're not farms, they'll be able to sell the same product as well.
What's that mean?
Yes.
Yes,
So-
I
so-
know.
So like,
Oh, yeah, I got you.
so right now, the whole liquor language is really messed up in the state.
So
But,
a brewery can sell somebody else's beer too.
So
correct?
right now, they would need, to sell other person's beer, they would need another bar license or, different kind of license
Okay.
for that, but with this one, the cafe, it allows, and there's actually a percentage that comes with this, as long as it's Connecticut made. So the main guide for this whole movement was to support Connecticut businesses, for this, small businesses, stuff like that, from what my understanding was.
Mhm. Right, it does
Um,
say in his email they can't sell any commercial products, so Bud or Absolute.
Yeah, so it has to be Connecticut, and I forget what the percentage is, it's either 25%, for some reason that number is sticking, of, products that they can bring in. But I do believe that's excluding, existing, like, brew pubs, because they're a combination of a restaurant and a brewery type thing. So like Willie
okay.
Brew up in Willimantic and stuff like that.
I
Would be an
see.
example of that, where they're a
Okay.
restaurant, but they have a brew pub where they only sell on site, they don't distro type thing.
Okay.
At least what I understand from the legislation that came out with that.
So in our regulations,
Yes.
didn't we make reference to the state
Mhm.
statute? So anything that happens in the state statute will just automatically.
True, we do
It
say,
just goes with their permit.
Purposely did that, right?
we do say as amended, is this under state statute 30-16?
This is just a bill, so it doesn't have this
Right.
active stream, so I mean,
That's a good point.
The only thing that they don't have yet, and this is the concerning thing to a lot of the businesses in the state, is, the DCP has not released all the new licensing yet. So like for breweries, for example, since I'm familiar with a lot of those, there's 3 different tiers that any brewery in the state of Connecticut could apply to. The regular one, the cafe, and then you even have a catering on top of that where they get their catering license. There's over 80 different kinds of liquor permits that were last year in the state of Connecticut, including like bowling alleys, restaurants, all kinds of that, and they've brought them back down to like 18 or 20.
Okay.
And none of the language for anything in the state has come out yet from the state. And that's concerning to like all the businesses in the state, because they don't even know what the new permit they're gonna be using is.
yeah, I think
So,
You
I
just have
guess,
to continue to monitor it, right?
right, I think,
There's nothing we can do
my
about it.
recommendation is that we should continue to keep in mind that the state and local regs are separate. And they're, so we shouldn't, my recommendation is that you shouldn't look to amend the regulation to accommodate for every type of liquor permit, clearly, because liquor permits are not
Right.
your
It's not-
purview.
yeah, yeah.
And I think it's written generally enough that it's, a tasting room or a brewery. But wasn't there a different
Yes,
legislation about like the craft that distilleries could also exist as part of a brewery?
Yeah, so I was
Okay.
actually just gonna mention that.
Just saw it.
So part of that new language that goes in effect in July is, so this is for any manufacturer permit in the state, whether you're a brewery, a vineyard, distillery, whatever it might be. It's unique to Connecticut, where Connecticut's actually leading industry right now. Is they're allowing multiple manufacturing permits to occur underneath the same LLC and underneath the same building without separation of a firewall. So that means a brewery can have a distillery, a vineyard can have a distillery, a vineyard can have a brewery, and so any combination that you want could exist as long as they applied for the feds, they applied to the state, everything was approved.
A firewall meaning an actual wall that prevents fire that you build in like a separate room?
Yes, so
So
say you had a
fire-
building complex
fire-rated
and
wall.
normally you need a separation of
Okay.
the entities, the LLC entities.
Oh, okay.
But now they allow it now, so like
Okay.
anyone in the state could have that. It's unique, for breweries and vineyards to be able to have this option because they can actually then recycle and reuse their waste product, their solid waste
Mhm.
product, and then turn it into a spirit. And that goes into what Carrie mentioned at the start, where they could a person can bring in other person's product. Well, if they're making their own product, then they're able to then sell it from the recycled product that they normally would be disposed of in the compost pile or sent to like animal feed.
And if we had an application come in tomorrow for someone who wanted to, had one entity, like a winery, but also wanted to have a distillery, first of all, we don't even have a distillery regulation, but say we did,
Yeah.
they would have to apply for both permits separately. So,
Yes.
I don't know if we wanna look at, if we wanna wait until we have an application and have the applicant propose some methodology.
Okay, we already have the draft for the farm
Yeah.
distillery.
Right.
And I think that's gonna be coming up in the next month or so.
Okay.
I would, I think it'd behoove the committee to just be proactive and look at that and be proactive before any of this comes up come July. Because there's already a lot of breweries looking at this option throughout the whole state of Connecticut. I know Two Roads.
What options
and a few
that, to
others.
expand, go,
To add distillery options, there's vineyards that are looking, because the wine grapes, they'll take the skins from the wine grapes after they press them, because they have the residual sugars, and then they'll distill that. And because that allows them to make their own stuff, it doesn't go into that percentile that they can bring in from other people since they're producing it themselves.
So I guess one thing to think about, and it's like a big picture, is do we look at combining the winery and the brewery and the distillery regs so that it's one or the other and or? You know, because if, and I haven't gone through this yet because I wanted to get guidance from all of you, but I don't know how different they really are. And if someone could be applying for both, maybe not simultaneously, but if they are simultaneously right now, like I say, they would have to go through both processes. So both a special use permit for essentially the same
Mhm.
requirements.
if somebody did come in, we could
The
come-
acreage is different,
we
actually.
could combine them together.
Oh, no, it's not 10
I mean,
acres.
we could just make it one process.
Now we have.
We could, I
the-
mean, it would be two.
True, two
I
applications.
would recommend waiving one fee for one of them.
Right.
So do both applications for the time being, we have a public hearing, special
True.
use to all together at the same time. I mean, I don't
Harry,
think
the only one difference, but I think we refer to it as we always refer back to state regulations, is depending on the entity, the state regulations for Connecticut ingredients varies between the three. But we are referred to state regulations, so I think that would
You could
encompass
cover
that
it,
anyways,
yeah.
that'd be covered.
I think right now, the big differences are hours of operation, the two are vastly different.
Well, we're okay with that, though. We could be more stringent.
We'd be rolling back one, actually.
What do you mean?
Well,
One is more open than
This
the
one
others.
is.
Hours of operation.
Right, that's what I'm saying, yeah, and it's this
No, I'm talking about our
No,
existing
the winery,
regulations.
the winery is.
Our winery hours of operation are like this, and then the brewery one is
Right,
much more
I gotcha.
refined.
Yep,
So
And the
if-
other thing
If
is-
we're combining it, then
Yeah.
someone's
Right.
either gonna,
yep.
it's good,
Right.
is benefit or not benefit.
Wouldn't
Or
you,
come to a median.
and this is just me talking out loud, have the applicant choose what's their primary function? And
Right,
if
that's
that's their
true.
primary function, then that should be the main, hours of operation
Mhm.
or guidelines.
Mhm.
Would that be
And
fair
it's-
to what the existing ones are?
Yeah, but somebody would definitely, make a point of that. I mean, that's, if your hours of operation, if one, if we combined them, you would have to most likely make them the same, I would think. I don't know how we would do it otherwise.
It also depend on too, when you look at the special use application, because then you're looking at a site application. So then from site to site, that could also vary too, because then, like we say like any site, when you're looking at an application, that you might have what the regulations are, but because of that particular site, it might be more appropriate, whether it's traffic or this and that. Like we've seen on many applications come through here, that those might vary. So I think in the long term, this committee has the control of, if they seem like it should be more restricted hours, then it could be very well be more restricted hours.
So what's happening for actually July? What's passed that we can see that, like, this is a bill? So
Yes.
This hasn't been passed yet. Is there anything that's been passed?
No, this has all been passed. It had multiple tiers that came out
Oh.
from
Can we
since
get-
last
That's-
July to now this
Can we
July
get the,
coming out.
can we get the actual, this is just, what we're reading is, I believe this is a bill.
Right, so that was.
there might be changes to, there might be changes from this to what's actually been enacted.
Well, it takes effect on July 1st, but that was the link that Representative Candelora had sent to me, and he just said the bill summary link is contained. So that's how I got to that.
And we're sure this is passed. So that's all I'm saying is that,
It passed last July.
no, but this is, but,
All he said is that the law, which takes effect on July 1st.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
past
It was how sometimes bills can be tiered when the governor can sign them in, and then it says this quarter, this goes into effect, now this quarter, this goes into effect. This one had a lot of language because they're restructuring the whole system, that this was giving time for that, DCP to get all their duckies in a row for all the different stages of this coming through. More or less.
Well, do we wanna take time and have you all look through it, and then we can kind of regroup on it? I don't know what the thinking is.
What do we need to look through for today? If it's a state reg, if it's state law, it's state law.
well, just read through this. 'Cause
Oh,
there's-
read through
there's-
this.
There's a lot of stuff in here.
Just to read through it and like pull out what you think may be impactful to North Branford, and obviously I'll do the same.
Isn't that what we have Alex for?
It's sad because I'm going to the guild meeting on next week.
So, this is gonna open up options for wineries, breweries, and distilleries.
Throughout
We
the
have
whole state.
existing, what's that?
Throughout the whole state.
Throughout the whole state. So we have current regulation for farm brewery and wineries, nothing for distilleries. This is gonna open up, I'll use an example for Alex, this could open up an option for Alex to also have a distillery.
Or a winery.
So if this allows it, we have to reflect back on our regulation for farm breweries? Is that what we're
Yes,
trying to discern here, right now?
right,
So how is this, so what do we need to do to our regulations?
right, because,
Yeah.
so the state, it's like, you think of like marijuana, like
Mhm.
say the state
Yeah.
approved recreational marijuana, if someone came in with an application, our regs don't address that, so how do we handle it? our town attorney could say, if your regs don't have it in there, then
Right.
it's prohibited, so.
No, I'm just, I have definitely appreciate the level of detail. I'm just trying, there's a lot of detail in there,
Yes.
which I'm not sure, I mean.
Right, I don't
I
think.
have a simple mind. I'm thinking, we just have to say, if we think, if Alex is allowed to have a distillery, then we have to look at it and say, okay, the brewery can be a distillery, what impacts does that have to the existing regulation?
Right,
Like, this is way too much detail
sure, right.
to bring into.
No,
The
no, no.
main
Right?
concern for any place in Connecticut, any brewery, any vineyard, any distillery, is you could have the existing one or you can have one that's supplying. And underneath that that building structure that already exists, so they might not change anything whatsoever. They might just bring in more equipment.
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
pulling like a permit from the feds and the state.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And that's what this allows.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. There's a lot of detail in here that I'm trying to decide for myself. It's like, this almost seems like, this is good. I mean, it's good to have this, but this is like too much detail.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, just think about what the intention of farm breweries were for farmers to expand other opportunities. Now we're talking about shipping, the increase looks like gallonage.
Right.
You can ship it across the state, and I'll be perfectly honest, that wasn't the intention that I had when I was passing
Right.
this.
No, I
This
agree with
becomes
you.
a full business on a farm. And
That-
so that's the,
Right.
you know, and that's, and also, on top of being a full potential, full
Yeah.
manufacturing, or up to a certain amount. But now, there's things in there about cafes and serving food and different things like that, so.
That's exactly
I'm not
what I
gonna
was
rush
saying.
this through. I'm gonna read through this,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna just go start changing the regulations until I'm really
Right.
comfortable. And maybe,
No
it
one-
will take an applicant to have a discussion with to do that. Cause there's a lot of stuff in here, and I don't know if we necessarily need to take it all up and try to, do we combo things together? Do we keep them separate? Really, at this point.
Right,
it's-
those
I
are
think
just kind of
really-
questions to throw
Yeah.
out there for you to
Yeah,
keep in the back of your
That was,
mind.
that was my point. It's almost like almost those key points you just said.
Yeah.
Those are the key points we need to extract out of this.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
too much detail.
Right,
It's-
so-
This could expand for out-of-state shipping. I mean.
Yeah.
Yes,
We have to consider that.
right,
Cafes and food and stuff, okay, that's another thing.
right. Well, and I
So
think it's
We almost need
sometimes,
someone to extract and boil that down.
yes, okay, and I can work on that, and Harry, if
Yeah.
you could look at it too, so
Yeah.
that, and obviously with Alex's knowledge of it, and I
Yeah.
think like a lot of times, obviously, there's state regulations that are much bigger and broader, and then the town regs kind of narrow it down, like think of like zoning,
Yeah.
right, so we have our specifics. In this case, it's almost kind of the opposite in that we don't have to get to the detail of like production
Right.
per se, but at least maybe we wanna say, or maybe we do, maybe we wanna say, you know, we'll permit a distillery and a brewery, but you can't exceed this much, like, as much as the state would allow.
So like what Carrie's saying and what Harry's saying is, this applies to the entirety of Connecticut, so including to the size of 2 roads. Cause as I mentioned before, the state of Connecticut chose to take over 80 different liquor licenses throughout the state, and they turned them into 18 or 20. So breweries alone had 5 different kinds, and they brought them down to these 3 that you see in that packet, plus the vineyards, plus everything else. I think Harry made a great point as in saying the farm aspect, and there already they kept the farm language into those, so those are restrictions to how much they can manufacture in a given year with that. But this is encompassing, this is including like everything throughout the state of Connecticut, which I think that's why the state hasn't released any kind of forms or licensing yet. I think that's why a lot of the businesses are getting nervous.
I mean, that's why even in the regs, I know it's more work for us, but I often don't mind language that says, you know, at the discretion of the commission, not in a, just because we have a power type of way, but because it slows us down and allows us to think, cause there's only so many cons we can think of in a moment, thinking 1, 2, 5, 10 years down the road. So sometimes I always support that type of language, cause at the discretion means it's just actually just giving us time to do our thorough thinking in a moment when we have this applicant or that applicant. And, you know, it's not really, hey, we have all the power, we wanna keep the power. No, it helps put, you know, that filter on it to be like, all right, we thought we were thinking about this like this 5 months ago, 5 years ago, but now with this applicant, we're thinking about it from this perspective. Because this is
Yeah.
very wide in its scope. So that's why if we do combine, or even the regs, it's not that it's dialing it back and, you know, hours of operations, it's not that we're dialing it back and saying no. When we say at the discretion, it's just like, hey, no, wait, we're just letting you know, we just need to think about this from this perspective in this spot with what you're wanting.
So I'm just gonna pass down copies of the sections of our zoning regs that have the winery and brewery, just so you have it when you're looking through both.
Yeah, good.
What's that?
Those are copies of the winery and brewery regs, so you can just compare.
I like this one. As under existing law for certain other manufacturer permittees, beginning after July 1st, the manufacturer permittee for spirits must
Yeah, that must be-
provide free potable water to anyone requesting it or offer non-alcoholic beverage for sale when the distillery is open. Okay, that makes sense, right? Then it goes on to say the water must meet all federal and state requirements on drinking water purity and be provided in at least 6-ounce containers that allow for individual consumption.
72 degrees
I mean, so I guess you can't ask, so you can't ask for a glass of water. It's gotta be for individual, I don't know, maybe, I don't. Wow. We should make that, you know, forefront of any of our regulations.
Yeah, never know when you're gonna be thirsty.
That's right.
Hey, some bars do that, you can't get a glass of water, you gotta buy a bottle.
Okay, so that's just to be continued for now?
Wait, so,
I assume so, yeah.
silly question, so our farm winery regs are already combined, right? Oh, no, farm.
Farm winery.
The winery.
Oh, the
Farm
hyphen is
brewery.
throwing me off.
Yep.
The slash is throwing me off. My bad. Oh, so we just have the farm winery right here.
No, breweries in there as well,
And then farm
and then farm events.
events on industrial zone.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, the slash on farm winery, tripped me up. It's not there's brewing. See, there's no slash on farm brewing.
Homework on the plane.
There you go.
Yeah, I can read it,
Need a paper clip?
No, I'm good. All right, the next one is, farm events, R40, R80.
So I put this on there just because we had talked about bringing it back. I'm not really sure what our next step is.
I think we should review what we have.
Yeah,
At the next meeting,
Okay.
review, and I know, like I said, I kinda wrote some stuff, I don't know if you still have it or not.
I do.
And then I think there were some other folks that were kind of putting stuff together. So maybe in our next pack, we can send copies out so we can
Okay.
look at that.
I think we also talked about, remember, Pellegrino got it to a point where it was getting close to what he took some of our feedback, it was close, and then it
Yeah.
was withdrawn, remember?
Yeah.
So I just thought that would be maybe a good
Good
starting
starting
point too, just
Okay.
to start,
Yeah.
I'm not
Oh,
saying
yeah,
that's
we
what
can
it
add
is,
that.
but.
I don't think he had anything about any, you know, when we said, you know, like, I was like, indoor, if you're gonna have acoustic, I mean, if you're gonna have, music, it has to be.
It did,
I think it did, yeah, it did more
I
than,
think that had the feedback
the
from-
other one, that was.
Yeah.
We modified it a few times.
That's what I tried
So
to.
I'm not, I don't recall what was in his.
I think so.
I don't think, I don't know if he had anything about it.
And I might, it wasn't perfect, but I'm saying we got it to
Oh,
a
yeah,
point
there's a
where
lot
it
of it in
was,
there.
it was getting close to what,
Mhm.
he did take some of our feedback,
Yeah.
maybe not all of it.
So,
So I just figured we could.
Well, now you have references to the industrial zone too,
yeah,
for some of those as guidelines.
Yeah, I think,
we can strip that out.
Yeah.
That's what we've done.
Okay.
That makes sense. Alright. On next is, a review and we don't approve
Are
it,
we getting
just give them
raises?
we just give
Yeah, you get
We're getting raises this year?
double, you got
It's
double,
not in
double
here,
your salary,
actually.
double your
I read
stipend.
that
It's not reflected.
Triple your stipend.
0 times 3?
Yes, exactly. Congratulations. I only got 2.5.
So, well, actually, if you can approve it, or report, recommend
Yeah.
it, right, exactly. So, no increases,
So we're on.
so, all right, so we look at the first, we looked at the.
Projection, right? Projected 2019-20.
No, actually, look in the center, so Planning and Zoning Commission, Personnel Services, all of this, and then Program Requested.
Oh, okay.
That's
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
2020 and 2021.
All right,
No increase?
can I ask a question on,
Printing and binding.
so contractual services,
Yes,
we don't need any printing and binding?
We have it now, right? Requested 500?
we do, we
But the
had it.
I'm looking at the manager, he's putting up 0 for that, so I'm just wondering why, I mean.
Oh.
No, no, well, so the manager hasn't reviewed or proposed anything, the numbers are all the same.
Oh, but it's not, because that says 500 on the request, but 0 on the proposed, so that's why I thought it was
Yeah.
different. So, okay, if there,
Can I see, sorry?
Yeah, it's 500 off.
500, that's what I was
Oh,
wondering. Yeah.
sorry, my version has, it should say 0.
On both?
Yeah, so I had 500 in there from last year, for the POCD.
Oh, okay.
But we really don't
Yeah,
print anything,
right.
so I took it out.
No, I didn't know if that meant some of
Sorry,
the stuff we did.
that's,
there.
my version has changed, I've been working on it. So do you wanna go through the details? Just so you know
Yeah,
what,
we could, yeah.
just at a high-ish level. So the personnel services, what's included in this is, secretary to the commission, additional fee extended for meeting hours, and then Tom Hogarty's hours as zoning
Mhm.
officer.
Okay.
So that obviously is all continuing as is. There may be a increase for our ZEO along with other personnel, but that comes at a later
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
once it's negotiated among all kind of, not administrative, like department heads, but he's grouped in that group, cause we're non-union. So then technical supplies, we typically just carry $100 for, new nameplates or other supplies that we might need, CDs. Planning and zoning publication, typically really don't use that, so we have just $20 in there. Again, printing and binding, that should be 0. For advertising and legal notices, $1,500 should be sufficient. I don't carry time for travel and transportation, so I should say my time is under the planning department, that's why you don't see my information in
Okay.
here. And so if I did have any travel or transportation, that would be in there, but we don't have anything in there for you all, sorry. But we do have professional development, so that's attendance at the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies, membership, and then, attending various seminars. So that was another question that I have later this evening is March 26th is the meeting, the annual conference, so you can let me know if you're interested.
You got my reply.
Okay, yes. And then the last one is other contractual, so if we need custodial assistance for any large public meetings, it's in there. And then the last page just kind of has a summary of what the Planning and Zoning Commission does, who it consists of. And then I like to have the highlights from the last calendar year.
We're missing a page.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine ends at the,
Oh, sorry.
custodial assistance. That's all right, I can miss it, I'm a good listener.
Well, I can forward this to you. So just some highlights from 2019, in case you're interested. You approved 3 site plans, 20 Branford Road, which was medical facility, Tilcon's 5-year operational plan, 2315 Foxen Road, which is retail, office, and apartment use, 4 special use permits, which was a farm brewery, Mill Pond Tavern, again, 2315 Foxen Road, which was the mixed use, and 438 Totucket Road, which is the placement of fill, which was the special use for that. 4 zoning regulation text amendments, so farm events in industrial zones, location and size of signs in industrial zones, stormwater management plan requirement, and increase in coverage. 2 amendments to the zoning map, which was the cluster of businesses on Forest Road, and then the parcels at Branford Road and Route 80. Modification of a subdivision at 363 Totucket Road, which was changing to the 10 lots as opposed to 13. And the 4-lot subdivision approval on Parsonage Hill Road. And the zoning enforcement officer investigated approximately 40 complaints/violations. I think that number might actually be higher. He issued 120 zoning permits, 64 certificates of zoning compliance, and hundreds of requests for information. Put in hundreds.
That's hysterical.
Numerous
That's funny.
site inspections, and then favorable referrals, 824 referrals. One was the fiscal year, capital improvement plan projects, referral for town-owned land at 50 Tommy's Path to be sold, and then extensions to for recording Mylars, and approval of 1177 Foxton Road to be used for maintenance, repair, and sale of vehicles. And let's see, I also talked about how the ZEO and myself, and actually I should mention, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission participated in discussions about the possible blight ordinance, and that a public hearing was held in 2019 and will be continued in 2020. So objectives for 2020, I said continue implementation of action plan of the POCD, promote well-planned economic development that enhances the community, and update the zoning regs, and continue to have the zoning officer handle zoning issues and work with residents, and then review the blight ordinance and work with town council on a document.
I'd like to add the old town hall property.
1599?
Yeah.
Okay, what
'Cause I
about
think-
it?
Well, I think there should be.
To review, or?
There should be more discussion on it. I mean, when that came up to the town council, that was over at the auditorium, I don't think that was it wasn't, there was a number of people there, but I don't think the discussion of options and really laid it out, just because there was a lot of folks saying we can do this with it, but there's limitations, because parking, access, I mean, there's only so much parking you can have if you're gonna do something in that area. So you can't park on the road, so let's say you were gonna use it for a main area. If you can only park 100 cars, so I mean, there's things I don't think that was fully,
Are you saying that
vetted.
we should, because this is what.
Well,
our
I mean,
goals, right?
we can start looking at the
Yeah,
zone
yeah,
and,
okay,
and,
yep.
I mean, I wouldn't wanna change the zone just for sake of changing the zone,
Yeah,
but maybe we
right.
should have, work with the town council to let's just really re-explore it, but really look at and see what the value is and mean to the community. I mean, what can we do there?
It's a
Whatever-
zone perm.
Zone business, I think it's B2.
Yeah, because we wanted mixed use at one point, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
so, but to your point, so you can have apartments in B2, but as you know, they have to be on the second floor,
Second
you're
floor,
limited
yeah.
to 5 units per building,
Yeah.
Right.
So
certain
what's the
size.
status now of the property? Is it the town just holding on to it, or is it, if a buyer comes along, the buyer will buy it, or?
Well, they did put it, I believe they did put it out there for, like an RFQ or something
Yeah.
like that, RFP potentially.
Right.
But we didn't get any.
There was only one response, but that was probably 3 years ago now.
Okay.
So there has been interest, so at least one person who's been kind of regularly contacting me, I mean, now it's slowed down because we haven't been responding back. But he is interested, meaning like, we haven't said, yes, this sounds great, it's more like, well, he needs an appraisal and a survey, which costs money, which we don't, have budgeted and set aside at this point in time, so as a result, he's still kind of, we're kind of stringing him along a little bit of like, well, hopefully we'll get those things, but he's interested in doing residential there specifically.
Yeah.
So which would require a regulation change.
I think Harry brings up a point, it's limited on space there, so if it's not usable for the town, but could be, rather than saying there being nothing, then that might be options that this committee can talk with the town council on, seeing what could happen with it, and like, as Carrie mentioned, well, it might make its appeal go more, so actually it could be put back into use
I
in
think-
some way.
I think Roger should be included, you know,
Mhm.
you know, cause they were talking about, say, making that a park, and then people would maybe walk from the, I believe from the condos, and maybe some way across, but, you know, I mean.
Condos down 139?
No, I'm not sure which, I don't recall, cause
Which, well,
Condos
there's,
are they walk-
I'm just saying, that's one of the comments that were made during
Oh.
the meeting, that's what I'm saying, I don't know if that's even, I mean, how viable that is.
so there's sidewalks
Feasible.
along that portion of 80 and 139 actually, that were part of the roadway expansion project, so, and there is some residential down 139 where the sidewalks are, so
Yeah.
people could
Could.
continue, or they could walk across 139 to get to Central Plaza.
I don't know how many people would, I mean,
Nobody's walking.
especially if you have a child, I mean, you could, I mean, you know, you have
We-
sidewalks on the side. But is, you know, if we're gonna do a park or something like that, and, I haven't seen that done yet, you know, so
Yeah.
let's at least start the conversation, I'm not sure what direction it goes in, but I just don't
Should
like
be.
driving by it and seeing it, you know, if it wants to be, if it's gonna be a park, then let's make it a park.
But we-
And have people take advantage of it, if it's gonna be something else, then
But-
let's explore those options
Well,
as well.
we can say, we can work with the town council, but we can't
Oh, no,
drive
of
in, it
course.
has to be the town council,
Right, of course.
or the town,
We have
yeah,
easy
yeah, so
access.
I think, no, I said, I think we're open to options, but
No, but I wanna drive the conversation, if,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, town council's not gonna drive, if they're not gonna drive the conversation, at least we can do some stuff on our side, work with Roger, and say, okay, here's some ideas that we think, you know, from economic development, from planning and zoning, here's some of the ideas that we have. Can we start can we revisit this and explore some of these options and use that, whether, again, if it's a park, let's make it a park, and let's, instead of having it just an open field right now, let's, you know, wherever it might be.
Weren't there one or two organizations that did a study of the use of that? Is
yeah,
that
like the Yale.
easily accessible? I
Mhm.
think there were
Yale
two,
did it,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there were two,
Oh.
but I think there were two done by Yale, one a long time ago, and then
I guess
another one
what I'm saying is
recently.
it sounds
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
think something
have
like
those.
it sounds like the
Those.
current barrier now is like what you just said,
Right.
those two pieces where
Right, a
if
survey
you
and
wanna drive the
appraisal.
conversation, you've
Right.
gotta, those are the two pieces we need. You need a survey and something else to even
Appraisal,
start any
right.
conversation. 'Cause-
Right.
What's the survey for?
To know the exact boundaries.
Because we have someone interested, but the barrier is we have the survey,
Yeah.
so we have to overcome that, and then we
Right.
can.
Well, and from a planning perspective, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's important to mention it now. The survey will show us, like I say, the extent of the boundaries. Part of the boundary of that parcel goes out to Notch Hill Road, so it's like a long panhandle that extends, and that's where the old trolley line was. So then when you think about
Ah.
future development on the other side of Notch Hill Road, which is the proposed over 55
Mhm.
housing, that's where the trolley line continues.
Mm.
So wetlands is going to have a walk looking at that, and at some point, I would encourage, everyone maybe to walk it, but a survey is kind of key to know what does the town own, because there have been driveways that have been constructed in that area, and there may be easements over that land that the town owns.
And because we own it, we would have to pay for the survey.
Yes, yes.
But at least if we can find something, a use for it,
To
then it
motivate-
makes sense
to
to
motivate
just
the survey.
do a survey and.
Well, and the other component is to look at, and this is why Wetlands wants to walk it, the Wetlands Agency, is because we don't know for sure that crossing Notch Hill is even viable. I mean, it's definitely going to be challenging, but it's not impossible.
Crossing Notch Hill, who? Human beings walking?
To make a contiguous walk of the trolley line all the way to Guilford.
No, I would recommend a bridge
Yeah.
over.
Bridge
Who
over
the hell's crossing Notch
troubled
Hill?
roads.
Yeah, you'd have to do
Well,
a
you'd have
bridge
to,
or-
you really would have to put a stoplights when you push the button if you're walking,
Yeah.
just to let light stops on both ways and counts out.
Oh,
you
I
know,
think you just
Not
put a
if
start,
it's like
a
you're
start
playing
here
Frogger.
and finish on
Whatever.
the other side,
But,
and
yeah,
you run as
let's look-
fast as you
yeah,
can,
so, I
what you
mean,
do.
So,
So-
I mean, that's something just to consider for sometime
Right.
this year. I just, again, I drive by that, and let's make a
Right,
park out of
and
it.
that,
Let's make a
that
decision, do something with it.
across, you know, a full connection, I mean, you could still develop 1599 separately from that, the rest of
I mean,
that.
it can be split,
Mhm.
it can be split,
Mm.
where you can have some, maybe small retail there.
I like
Maybe you
the
can have a
numbers.
park, you can mix it, I mean, we'd have to look at the size and the scope of that. But there might be different
There was a
options.
plan of like mixed use and then try to tie it into the central plaza,
Mhm.
you know, with the,
Mhm.
kind of bring that all together
Yeah,
and
the one-
people that lived above could, you know,
Yeah.
visit everything up, I mean.
But the one,
Right.
Sound like a good idea.
Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the Yale.
Yale Urban
study,
Workshop.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it had a building, close to Route 80, long, strip, you know, with mixed use on top, and then there was one in the back.
Condos set back.
Yes, so
you'd have
maybe
the
that's
condos-
kinda much, you know what I'm saying, for that
Yeah.
property?
Yeah.
Maybe the option, maybe you could do, again, both, part of it could be like a rec area, a little small little rec area, some of it could be a little mixed use, and maybe get some value out of it.
Well, and
Yeah,
the
there was
one
a-
plan, yeah, center plan came back, the most recent RFP that went out, they came back with 2 buildings at least, with maybe a central area as well, and they had, it would be like at least one kind of anchor tenant,
Yeah.
with maybe even a drive-through, but
Right,
access is challenging, for sure,
yeah, I know that, that's what I'm saying, it's gotta be good, it's small,
Yeah. so,
okay.
okay.
But, you know,
Well, I'll
maybe we
add that in.
maybe we can talk with Roger too,
Okay.
so.
The only other item that I'm going to put in as a capital cost estimate or capital improvement project is updating our zoning regulations. So having a consultant put together a proposal to like streamline our zoning regs and also make sure that they're in line with case law and state statute and all of those things.
Is it something, the folks that did the POCD would be involved, could be involved
Could be,
with?
yep,
Okay.
yep. And then I'm also going to ask the town attorney's office to see if that's something that they could provide as a service, maybe an additional fee, but I know Guilford's updating theirs right now, and I think their budget is 65,000, so it's not inexpensive.
We got 500 that we can
Yeah,
carry over.
exactly. For printing.
You know, I won't go to the Federation meeting, okay?
How long does that
I'll
take?
give
How,
back
Thank
30.
you, thank you.
years? How long's that
I'll bring it back.
process supposed to take?
I'll just present it there, go to the state, then I'll bring it home for you.
Yeah, just months. I would say about the same time as the,
There you go.
well, maybe as long as the POCD, maybe not.
Okay, that's interesting.
10 months-ish.
Mhm.
I think they should be able to get it done. So in Guilford, they
That's a
have
good idea.
someone, and he's actually, having meetings with the public without having the planner, zoning officer, or planning and zoning commission in attendance, because he wants to hear from them directly. Like, how's it going? What do you think works? What doesn't work? And then just totally like rehashing their zoning regs.
Would they, you know, I know sometimes when we get an application or have a thought, we look at our regs and say, oh, that doesn't have common sense. Do they also look for instances like that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So like, one issue that we've gone back and forth with is with the interior lots, if you have to have a 50-foot setback from that access point, is that a street line? Is it just a property line? So
Okay.
we need to clean up things like that, because the
Yeah.
definition is very confusing.
So it's
Oh,
more
that's good to know.
cleaning up stuff like that, not just big changes and amendments or stuff
Well,
like
we
that.
can develop the scope however we feel is best. But it wouldn't be someone coming in rewriting our regulations and
Yeah.
putting in things that we
Not
wouldn't
just-
want. It would
Yeah.
be
Cleaning them up.
cleaning them up, making sure that they
In
don't
line with
conflict
law.
with themselves or
Correct, yeah.
are unclear.
State directive.
Right.
That's a good idea. When's
But
the
I
last
have
time
that in
was
as
done?
like, not for this year, for probably 21, 22, like, at least next
Yeah.
year.
When's the last time that
You
was
can,
done?
you can sneak that
I don't
one
think
in.
it's ever been fully revamped, it's just been like kind of piecemeal.
You can
Wow.
sneak that in when they build you in high school.
That's the reason why when we look at something, we're like, wait, what? Why does that, why does it say
You
Since-
can also,
since,
some of our
Ron
goals,
was
the
born.
POCD goals, maybe you could
Yes.
look at some of those key ones, you know, and
Right.
work that in some of them.
Right.
So, would somebody like, a motion to approve the recommended
Uh,
2020.
To recommend.
Back to that.
Recommend, right?
Yeah, recommend.
To recommend to the town council.
Recommend the proposed 2021 budget.
I make,
You can just say what he said.
I make a motion to recommend the fiscal year 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission budget.
Close enough. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? None, that passes 4-0. And
Thank you.
Terry, you did bring something up that I just wanna quickly ask you. Remember, we passed the medical facility, but what is there been any movement on that at all?
No. So the group that was going to go in there, I believe, was acquired by a different group.
Oh, okay.
And so now they're hesitant to move in there
Well,
this
okay.
time. But
Yeah.
not totally
Okay.
done deal, but,
What's up with
no
the 55 and over?
activity. They submitted their wetlands application.
They had 3 years.
They got through they were in the wetlands process, ran out of time and had to withdraw in December, so now they've resubmitted with, they're farther along than they were the first time, which is good, so. I would expect that you'll see that one maybe March, maybe April, end of March, early April.
I always
Looking
enjoyed
back
that.
at other applications or just,
Get kind of irate
other people that come
Well,
from us
but
for like other business.
they can use the whole budget.
Anything ever turn out with, when John came and saw us?
John Judy
Yeah,
and his parcel,
yeah.
no, next to the restaurant,
Yeah.
no. He has interest, but there's no plans, you know, and Roger's talked with some people that have interest, but, and so he's trying to connect them, but we'll see. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of steps that would have to happen in order for that to go anywhere. But we did get an application, a special use application from Van Wilgens to hold farm events.
Okay.
So there will be a public hearing on that March 5th.
Wait, I'm confused. Didn't we?
That was for the text amendment. This is their actual application.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
So this is their application with their site plan and their general operation plan.
okay.
They would still, at a later, if this is approved, submit to the zoning officer a list of events.
And this one has to be, abutting neighbors have to be notified of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, abutting, 500, with
500
500 feet, and then, a sign on the property and legal notice.
Yep.
So, for events, so that actual one doesn't need a list of attended events, it's just, if that got approved, then they would come back in front of the committee and be like, hey, this is what 2020 is gonna look, or 2021 is
They
gonna
actually
look.
just submit that list of events to the zoning officer.
Okay.
So in here, you'll see, when you get this in your packet, but they just state generally, so they have, most events will occur between June 1st through October 31st. Occasional event may occur outside of that range. No events will occur in the month of May. They talk about requiring structures, the hours of operation.
Yeah, okay.
So, and then obviously, once you review this during the public hearing, if you want more detail, you can request that.
We good? If we are, the elder statesman must.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and
So
I
Ron's gotta
can't,
keep-
because I can't, and I'm not sure.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.